All right, grade 11s, we're going to do 2 days of graphing. We're going to get your transformation chops back and work with sinusoidal functions, which can be interesting. I'm going to sketch the graph of y, and I'm only going to do 3 examples, but I'm going to sketch the graph of y equals minus 2 sine 2x plus 2. And we're going to do it as a series of transformations. So we're going to do one or maybe a pair at a time. And we're going to start by writing down in English what has gone on. So I have the transformations down here for you so that we don't forget what's going on. And this graph, I'm going to work left to right, and I see a negative 2 at the beginning. So first of all, that a value, that minus 2, tells me that I have an amplitude of 2, and it is a reflection in the x-axis, so it is upside down. Second thing that I see working left to right is this 2. And it is 2 multiplied by the x, so it is a horizontal stretch or compression. Because it's a 2, it's a compression, and it's factor 1/2. So our old language would be a horizontal compression, factor 1/2. That's going to change the period. So the period is always 360 divided by that number, which is 2. So it's going to be 180. Third and last thing that I see is the 2 added on the end. That is a vertical translation up to. We're going to call it a displacement. And it's up to. So we've got to get those 3 pieces. So I'm going to start by graphing y equals sine x, and I'm going to do it as a dotted line in black. First of all, I need to get my scale. Well, I tried to get it straight. All right, we have y that will not go straight for me, and we have x. And we are going to mark our grid with our degrees. So I'm going to do every 3 squares is 90 degrees. 180, 270, 360. So let's do this together. I have 450, 540, 630, and 720. So I've got room for 2 full cycles there. Minus 90, minus 180. Okay. I am going to mark my spaces every second. 1, 2, 3, 4. Minus 1, minus 2. Okay. Let's draw a sine curve. Just a regular y equals sine x will be my first. So different colors really helps with this. And we're only doing 3. So with sine x, we start at 0, 0. We are at a maximum 90 degrees, 0, minimum at 270, whoops, 0 at 360, maximum 0, minimum 0. There we are. I'm going to go to the left as well. So it will be a minimum just before. There we are. Y equals sine x. I'm going to put the negative sign and the 2 together. So we have an amplitude of 2, and everything is upside down. We've got a reflection in the x-axis, vertical. So in blue, it's going to be upside down and double. So instead of a maximum of 1 like I have here, I'm going to have a minimum of negative 2. So my curve would go like that. Instead of a minimum here, it's going to be a maximum. There. Yours will be neater than mine. and to the left. There. That would be y equals minus 2 sine x. The next transformation that we have is the 2x, which is the horizontal compression factor of half, which will change our period. So it will no longer take 360 degrees to complete a cycle, it will take 180. So from our 0, 0, instead of the 360 to go down, back to 0, up to the maximum, back down again, it will take us 180. So I need, everything is going to be halved. All right, I want to show you one cycle before we talk about it too much. Here is one cycle. As best I can on the smartboard. My one cycle starts at 0, 0, goes to the minimum, up to the maximum, back to 0, one cycle in 180 degrees. What you can do also is that each of the x-intercepts is going to be half the distance from 0, 0 that it used to be. So this, let me do it in red, this x-intercept at 180 degrees has now half the distance and is moved there. This one has halved the distance and is moved there. If that helps your eyes see a little bit. So let me continue that green pattern. So I've got another cycle running for the next 180 degrees. I'm going to do another cycle for the next 180 degrees. So I have to have a low right in the middle, a 0, a high, and low, 0, high, 0, 180 degrees. Low, 0, high, 0, 180 degrees. Try it. It's fun. Backwards, high, 0, low, 0. There we are. So that would be y equals minus 2 sine 2x. And lastly, we're going to take that entire green one and we're going to move it up 2. So my 0, I'm going to move major points. My zeros are all getting off here. So that is up 2. So I've just transferred all my x-intercepts up 2, and I am going to do the same pattern. Low, 0, which has now been moved up 2, high, 0, or what used to be. Low, middle, high, middle, low, middle, high, middle, low, middle, high, middle. There we are, moved up 2. There we are, low, there. There! Hope you use different colors. Hope it draws nicer than the smartboard. Let's do the next one. Y equals 5 cos 2 x minus 90 plus 1. Let's list what we see first of all. The 5 is our amplitude. It has not been flipped upside down, so we just have to make an amplitude of 5. The 2 is going to change our period. There's 5, 2. The period is now 360 divided by 2, which is 180. We don't use really big numbers. We don't want to scare you too badly. Minus 90 means phase shift 90 to the right. And lastly, we have the displacement. one up. Okay, so let's draw our grid and a basic cos curve. There, made it so you could read it. Cos starts at a high, so it starts at 1 and goes through 0, low, 0, high again. So 1 is our starting point, 0, low, 0, high point, and so on it goes. There's our cos curve. And backwards, y equals cos x. Our next graph would be y equals 5 cos x. Always go left to right, you avoid errors, which is where we have an amplitude of 5. So the very same graph, not upside down, our starting point would be 5. 0 at 90, the same. Low at 180, which would be negative 5. 0 at 270 still. High at 360, which is going to be a little pointy, sorry. 0 at 450. Low at 540. 0. High. 0 again. To the left. There. Y equals 5 cos x. The next transformation is where we have a horizontal, compression 1/2 in this case, where our period becomes 180. So we take the blue one and we compress everything doubled. So all of the horizontals get halved. So what my eye does is I go from a high to a high in 360. So I'm going to go from a high to a high in 180. And in the middle of that is going to be a low, which is going to be right here. So I get those points marked out, and then I graph my first. Going to be steeper, low, back up to a high. And I would continue that pattern. The next high will be here, and in the middle of that will be my lowest. Just got to be able to count, apparently. All right, here we go down to a low, back up. And that is a horizontal compression, a half. Our period is 180. And going the other way would be the same. Well, that side didn't work at all. Last, we can do the phase shift 90 to the right and the displacement up 1 in 1 step. Y equals 5 cos 2 x minus 90 plus 1. Those two parts we're going to do together. So it's to the right and up 1. I take my major points, starting with that one, and I'm going to go 90, which is 3 squares to the right and 1 square up. So that point becomes that point. I'm going to get rid of that old red one. It's going to get my eyes confused. There. And the smartboard as well, apparently. So my initial point, or my old initial point, is now there. I'm going to move all of my highs 3 squares to the right, 1 square up. And so on. I've got my high points, my low points, 3 squares to the right, 1 up. There. I have my highs and my lows and my email apparently. Let's graph it as smoothly as we can. And going in the other direction. There we are. We have graphed our function. Last but not least, y equals 3 cos 3x minus 360. So let's make a list of what we see. First of all, the first 3. We have an amplitude of 3. It has not been flipped across the x-axis. There's no reflection. So we're going to do a normal cos curve. I did 2 cos instead of 2 sine because I think sine just for some reason is easier when it starts at 0, 0. So we're going to do a cos together. The next number that I see affects the period. The number multiplying is a horizontal change. So my period will be 360 divided by 3, which is 120. Just a little bit trickier. And it looks like we have a phase shift to the right of 360, but beware, it is not, because we have a variable there, or a coefficient there, sorry. Y equals, we're going to factor that out. 3 cos 3 x minus 120. So we can see there, when we factor that out, that we have a phase shift of 120 to the right. All right, let's set up our grid. I'm going to start by drawing a basic cos curve. Cos starts at a high, and it takes 360 degrees to complete the cycle. So we're going to go from a high to a high in 360 degrees, so our low is right in the middle. Zeros, there we are. Let's draw a smooth curve. That would be one cycle for cos. It's just easier if you don't breathe. There we are. Backwards. And there we are. Y equals cos x. Now I'm going to apply my transformations. The first one is the amplitude of 3. So instead of starting at a high maximum of 1, we start at a maximum of 3. Our minimum will also be at 180 degrees, but it will be at negative 3. Our zeros are going to stay the same. High, 1, 2, 3, 0, low, 0, high. Here we go. Oops, didn't like that. Ah, I'm off center, aren't I? There we go. And zeros are the same and headed towards a minimum. There we are, y equals 3 cos x. Next, I have the change in period, which is a horizontal compression factor 1/3. So we're going to draw y equals 3 cos 3x. These are really good practice. A period of 120 degrees is a little tricky. We start at a high, we return to a high in 120 degrees. So I'm going to mark my starting point, my 120 degrees. That is my new period. And so in the middle, I am going to have my lowest value. A quarter of the way along, I'll have a 0 and a 0. So I know my major points now. I just need to graph it. Through the 0 to the low. X-intercept to a high. And so we could continue. every 4 squares. 0 to a low, 0 to a high, and so on. Continues the same to the left. Y equals 3 cos 3x. The last is we are going to have a phase shift 120 degrees to the right. I haven't used blue. I said that right. Yes, phase shift 120. Y equals 3 cos 3 x minus 120. So every major point gets moved to the right 120. Well, that's actually quite an easy shift because I move my high to here. Well, it's not going to change the look of it one bit. So that first curve starts over here and continues. And we're going to have the very same curve. Wonderful. Right, some for you to practice. In your textbook, page 383, 7 to 9, and page 405, 8 to 10. We're going to be doing this for 2 days, so do it carefully, do it well.